Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 7 of the Cannabis Control Bill, and may I explain? In the other House, subclauses 3 and 4 of the bill then before that other House were less than clear in the views of a number of members of the independent bench and members of the opposition bench. And I take this opportunity to record my appreciation. After some discussion and debate at committee stage, I invited a collaboration between the independent and opposition bench, and I express my gratitude to independent Senators Vera and opposition Senator Lachmidial, who came up with the formulation of words which the committee subsequently amended and the Senate amended, so that subclauses 3 and 4 are to be deleted and replaced by new subclauses 3 to 6, which were drafted by the independent and opposition benches and accepted by all. I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 7 of the Cannabis Control Bill 2020. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in relation to Clause 7, I know we are dealing with Clause 7 now, but the concern that I have has to deal with reconciling the proposed amendment at Clause 7 and what will be Clause 14. And I know there's a slight amendment to be made to Clause 14. Madam Speaker, with your permission, if I may just identify the area of concern for the benefit of the Honourable Attorney General. What we see at the proposed amendment, Clause 7(4), we note it is to disclose in writing to the board and to the President, as opposed to Clause 14, where it has to be a disclosure to the Minister. The concern comes really at the proposed Amendment 5, that would be Clause 7, subsection 5. Subject to the following provisions of this paragraph, a member of the board shall vacate office. And so we indicate the two instances in which they shall vacate office. When you look at Clause 14, it suggests that you can actually have an anniversary date where a member will disclose within 1 month their particular interests, whereas this clause suggests, and this is where we want it very tight, that a person will vacate office once there is that conflict of interest. So that is what I wanted to raise with the Honourable Attorney General, if there is any concern with regards to reconciling 7 and 14. Certainly from where we look at it, there seems to be an at odds position between 7 and 14.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Through you, Madam Speaker, we don't see on our side, and there was a discussion along this line somewhere around midnight of that evening when we were in the other place. We don't see an inconsistency, and I would therefore propose that Clause 7, 3, 4, 5, and 6 go forward as drafted and accepted by the Senate.
Okay, and you beg to move.
And I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 7 of the Cannabis Control Bill 2020. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 15.5, I beg to move that the House continue to sit until the conclusion of the matters before it. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that this House continue to sit until the conclusion of the matters before it. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
Clause 9. Insert after the word Gazette the words and at least once in 2 daily newspapers of general circulation.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 9 of the Cannabis Control Bill 2020. Those words, as have been inserted by the amendment and accepted by the other House, are to give effect to the publication by Gazette, and more particularly in respect of lay people who might not ordinarily read the Gazette, even though it constitutes constructive notice in at least once in 2 daily newspapers of general circulation. Accordingly, I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 9 of the Cannabis Control Bill 2020. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In relation to Clause 9, we have no objection. Madam Speaker, just as an addendum, and certainly I mean no disrespect to the procedure of the House, from here onwards, if it would assist, we will have no objection to the other clauses, proposed clauses and amendments.
Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm grateful to my learned friend, honourable member on the other side. Madam Speaker, in the circumstances, I beg that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 9 of the Cannabis Control Bill. I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to Clause 9 of the Cannabis Control Bill 2020. All in favour say aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Clause 12. Delete the word 5 and substitute the word 7.
Madam Speaker, if I may be allowed to make an inquiry, I think I had understood the honourable member on the other side, unless I'm unclear, that he would agree for all of the remaining clauses to be put to the House, and I would simply beg to move. I think that's how I understood he would prefer to proceed.
I thank you, Attorney General. Thank you, Member for Chaguanas West. The clerk will have to stand and read all of the clauses, and then the Attorney General would put the question with respect, propose the amendments to all the clauses together, en masse. So, clerk.
Clause 14A. In subclause 1, delete the words every member and substitute the words subject to section 5(2)(f) and (g) of the Dangerous Drugs Act, every member. B. In subclause 2, delete the words $150,000 and substitute the words $250,000. C. Delete subclause 3. Clause 15. In subclause 2, delete the words no person and substitute the words subject to section 5(2)(f) and (g) of the Dangerous Drugs Act, no person. Clause 16A. In subclause 5 in the chapeau, delete the words 1 month and substitute the words 1 week. B. In subclause 7 in the chaussure, delete the words $150,000 and substitute the words $250,000. Clause 21(1). In subparagraph E, after the words public awareness, insert the words drug rehabilitation. Clause 25(2). Delete the words which, in the opinion of the Auditor General or the Auditor, is of sufficient importance to justify so doing. Clause 29(a). In subclause 1, subparagraph A, after the word curing, delete the words or packaging and substitute the words packaging or storage. B. In subclause 1, subparagraph B, after the words allow for the, insert the words storage of cannabis and the. C. In subclause 1, subparagraph C, after the words allow for the, insert the words storage of cannabis and the. D. In subclause 1, paragraph D, after the words allow for, insert the words the storage of cannabis and for. E. In subclause 1, subparagraph E, before the word dispensary, insert the words pharmacy or. F. In subclause 3, subparagraph A, after the word curing, delete the words or packaging and substitute the words packaging or storage. G. In subclause 3, subparagraph C, after the word importation, insert the words and storage. H. In subclause 3, subparagraph D, after the words allow for the, insert the words storage and. Clause 30. Delete subclause 9 and substitute the following new subclause. 9. An applicant for a license who knowingly provides false or misleading information to the authority commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $250,000 and imprisonment for a term of 2 years. Clause 44. A. In subclause 1, delete the chapeau and substitute the following. 1. Subject to subsections 2 and 3, a patient may, with the consent of another, designate that other person his caregiver, and that designated caregiver shall be responsible for. 2. Delete subparagraph C. 3. Insert the word or at the end of subparagraph A. And 4. In subparagraph B, delete the word safety or and substitute the words safety. B. In subclause 7, insert after the word shall the words within 1 week of the change. C. Insert after subclause 7 the following new subclause. 8. A patient and his designated caregiver shall notify the authority of the designation and give to the authority such information as the authority may require in respect of the new caregiver. Clause 47. In paragraph C, insert after the word adherent the words at a regulated frequency as may be prescribed. Clause 48. In subclause 1, in subparagraph A, delete the words an adherent and substitute the words a leader.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to clauses 14, 15, 16, 21, 25, 29, 30, 44, 47, and 48 as read by your clerk. And if I may just assist members to appreciate the reasoning behind the amendments. In clause 14, it was considered that to make clear the offense that the word subject to section 5(2)(f) and G of the Dangerous Drugs Act, every member should be inserted at the beginning of subclause to ensure that persons handling cannabis for personal use as is permitted under that act, that is to say, the Dangerous Drugs Act, would not be prejudiced. In subclause 2, it was considered that the fine should be increased. That was increased to $250,000. And in subclause 3, the provision no prosecution for an offense under this section may be instituted without the written consent of the Director of Public Prosecutions was deleted. With respect to clause 15,
Attorney General, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we haven't done 12. So if you can just deal with 12
I beg your pardon.
Further on. Yes.
Yes, I went one forward. I'm sorry. And if I may just, with respect to clause 12, which is one of those that was amended, the original number of members of the board, the authority, was 9. That was then increased to 11. So it was considered that the quorum should be increased to 7 as a corollary to the earlier amendment. Thank you very much for the guidance, Madam Speaker. With respect to clause 15, this was amended to harmonize with earlier amendments so that the words, again, as I've just explained, subject to section 5(2)(f) and G of the Dangerous Drugs Act, no person, were inserted at the beginning. With respect to clause 16, staff of the authority and experts, two amendments were made. The first amendment reduced the required period for a declaration to be made by an employee of the authority, an expert, an advisor, or a consultant to the Chief Executive Officer on whether or not he has an actual or contingent pecuniary interest in any company, firm, or other entity regulated by the authority. That amendment now requires those persons to make such a declaration to the Chief Executive Officer 1 week after their appointment or engagement and on each anniversary of their appointment or engagement. And the second amendment increased the fine, as I earlier explained, up to the sum of $250,000. With respect to clause 21, the words application of the fund was amended by now including drug rehabilitation as a further expenditure for the use of the monies of the fund. In clause 25, audit of accounts, the Auditor General or the auditor authorized by him has a discretion whether to report an irregularity disclosed by the audit, if such irregularity is of sufficient importance, in his opinion, to justify so doing. It was considered that such a discretion was outside the remit of the Auditor General. All irregularities disclosed by the audit must be brought to the attention of the Minister and the Board, and accordingly that clause was amended to remove that discretion, so that, Madam Speaker, now the Auditor General or an auditor authorized by him shall immediately draw to the attention of the Minister and the Board any irregularity disclosed by the audit. With respect to Clause 29, types of licenses, 8 amendments were made. Beg your pardon. All 8 of these amendments, Madam Speaker, provide for storage of cannabis. While it was earlier, it could have been said to have been implied in the language that was used in the different subsections of Clause 29, it was thought better to make it express. So the word storage of cannabis is explicitly included. In respect of Clause 30, eligibility for a license, the offense committed by an applicant for a license who knowingly provides false or misleading information, again, it was considered that this fine should be increased to $250,000. With respect to Clause 44, caregivers, the following amendments were made. Firstly, the clause was amended to now provide that a patient may designate another person his caregiver once that other person gives his consent to be a caregiver. Secondly, the responsibility of a caregiver having to act in the best interest of the patient was removed. Thirdly, the clause was amended to insert the requirement of a patient informing his medical practitioner of a change of his caregiver within 1 week of the change. And lastly, a new clause, subclause, was inserted which requires a patient and his designated caregiver to notify the authorities of the designation and to give to the authority such information as the authority may require in respect of the new caregiver. In Clause 47, sacramental dispensaries, the requirement that a sacramental dispensary shall dispense no more than 30 grams of cannabis to any single adherent was amended in order to provide for some regulation so that the words are now added at a regulated frequency as may be prescribed. And the final amendment, which was made to Clause 48, Madam Speaker, declaration of exempt event. This clause was amended to replace the word an adherent of a religious organization. It was considered more appropriate to give that role to the leader of a religious organization. By this amendment, therefore, an event to be declared by the minister as an exempt event for the purposes of the Act must, among other things, be promoted or sponsored by a person who is a leader of a religious organization as opposed to merely an adherent of that religious organization. Madam Speaker, with those words, I beg to move that the list of amendments in the clauses which I have just elucidated I beg to move that they be passed.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to clauses